Welcome to Space Insiders. My name's Tony Sewell, and here with my space mate, Rob Ruyak. How you going, Rob?
Good, Tony. How you doing down there in Australia? Congrats on the
Good.
move.
Yeah, cheers. I think this is our first one
It is.
with the cross-Pacific recording, which is good.
Yeah.
Slowly getting settled in. Just arrived into the lovely part of the Melbourne summer. Got to take the family to the Australian Open on Sunday. So, yeah, living the dream. I've actually got to start working now, though. So I'm getting on a plane up to Sydney tonight. So,
As my father-in-law used to say when he was still alive, obviously, he said, all good things must come to an end, Rob.
that's
And he
right.
would say that every time we visited them in Florida.
If only I could,
Yep.
if only I could find someone to pay me just to be a man of leisure.
Oh,
But,
yes.
yeah.
Yes, I agree. Well, we get to do this together. This
We
is
do,
this is
yeah.
fun.
So this is fun. And
I
I
have
think
to say, can I share the quick story?
yeah.
So this was really cool. I texted Tony when I was in Dallas flying home, and right before I got on my plane, I texted him, "Have a great trip, good luck." He said, "Oh, I'm just sitting here and with the family in Dallas on my waiting for my connection." And so I was telling people about this, Tony. I got to see Tony and his family before they left the country, and I was just so
It was awesome because
grateful.
we've been
Yeah, to
trying to
see you
work
go.
out how to catch up with each other for the
Yeah,
last couple of months, and we
yeah.
hadn't. And then, yeah, like literally the last moment, so as we're leaving the country, it was awesome, Rob.
Total
Uh,
serendipity. It was
yeah,
awesome, and
totally.
there was a reason for that, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
digress. It was
yeah.
fun.
So, we're gonna we'll restart our interviews, hopefully on the next episode in a couple of weeks. But we're going to do another bit of a sort of retrospective, looking at a few clips from the last year, and I think covering one of the topics that both you and I were most excited and really enjoyed talking to our guests about, and that is leadership and culture and all of that and the importance of that.
Yeah, and for those that didn't listen to it, this is the second time we've done something like this. I think, Tony, when you and I were talking, we have interviewed over 19 people since May when we started, and we're very fortunate to even have those folks talk to us. And so last time, we had a really good session, and we talked a little bit about software revolution, the data revolution, the changing capital landscape for startups, especially in the space industry, and it was really fun. And I think one of the things that Tony and I thought we were going to leave off the table if we didn't really talk about it was the leadership topic, because that was honestly, in some ways, for me at least, it was surprising how often that topic came up.
Yeah.
In a whole variety of questions that we talk with folks. So, we're excited to kind of go through this and go through some of the clips. And, when I was doing it, Tony, when I was preparing, I think there's three main things that I thought were kind of interesting that we'll talk through. And for those that, want to continue to listen, these are some of the topics. Like, the funding environment has completely changed. How do you make decisions around that, right?
Mm.
The technology is pushing an uncharted territory in this market. How do you keep it going? How do you lead a team with that vision when there's so much uncertainty? And then how do you just simply build something that's never been done before? And how do you lead a team when that is what you're doing? That was, I think, a repeated set of topics we discussed. And I'm excited to kind of go through some of these with you, Tony, and kind of add our own perspectives to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As I sort of went through the clips and did my prep, you and I are, we're not sort of young entrants to the business
Speak for
world
yourself.
anymore.
Yeah.
We're approaching advanced age from a career perspective, so it's I think we've seen a lot of the good and the bad now. So it was kind of good, but it's always good to have sort of reminder of those lessons and to kind of refocus. But I think there's something in this. There's not just messages in here for someone that's coming into a CEO role. There's really good lessons for everyone, like regardless of what part of your career maturity you're at, and I think it's good to be able to recognize quickly, sort of orient and recognize those good and bad traits in folks as well. So you can kind of adapt your behavior and your style and also be mindful about, I guess, applying the good and not learning the bad. So,
Exactly. Yeah, we're
yeah,
we're in the wise years, Tony,
we
of our
are in the
career.
wise years. Yes.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. You haven't turned 50 yet, have you? You're approaching.
No, we're all approaching 50 if we're lucky. No,
it's
I'm
not,
not that old yet, no.
it's not far away. It's in sight, unfortunately.
Alright, let's stop with the age thing. Let's
Okay.
just move it.
All right. So let's go to our
Yeah.
first clip. So I think one of our favorite discussions from the year was the only actually in person one we did was with Kevin Steen. The three of us
Mhm.
in a room, and despite the crappy audio setup, it was a great one. So let me go to that clip.
And I think the number one reason that's out there is just culture fit is the number one reason that these things don't work out as they planned. And so I think the thing that I learned the most at SAP when I did all those transactions was the most important thing besides leadership was empathy, understanding how the acquired company feels and being able to then handle that and be ready to address those issues, concerns, or proactively think through that. And I think that's the hardest part for any acquisition, whether you're acquiring or being acquired. It's hard to think about how the other side is thinking of this. They're not, doesn't mean people are bad people. It's just they all have different perspectives. But the ones that I think have gone the best is when you can truly be empathetic to how the other folks are feeling, number one. And then number two, as the leader, you have to be in the middle, right? You have to be neutral. You can't be seen and you can't believe that you're going to favor one side. You really have to just think of the end game, that you're the goal. Why did you want to do that transaction? And what was the value in it? And just drive to that and leave the partisanship or the politics, if you will, behind. And sometimes that's hard because I spent so many years with my legacy iDirect folks. Suddenly had all these new tech folks, and to make sure that I wasn't being seen as favoritism, but also just again focusing on that value.
All right, Rob. Thoughts?
Um, I loved well, first of all, how great is Kevin Steen? I mean,
Yeah,
he is
and
so
yeah.
awesome. I mean,
And just a
he's
reminder for
yeah.
people, I guess, like he's a really well-known exec within the SATCOM industry, particularly. He was a CEO. He's had many C-level appointments. Rose to be the CEO of iDirect when they acquired Newtek. He was also CEO of OneWeb Technologies, the American business for OneWeb, which then became CEO of Eutelsat Americas when they were acquired. So particularly the acquisition, like I guess his mental model for how to deal with one of the most stressful and complex things that happens in a business, an acquisition, whether you're the acquirer or the acquiree, it's a challenging time.
Yeah, this was one of my favorite interviews because I think this is a term that gets thrown around a lot these days, and sometimes uh, it's a word that some people pick up as a weakness and not a strength. Empathy. It's something that he really talks a lot about, and it was interesting to see how his mind went immediately to that word, right? And what I took away from that discussion with him is that, which I never thought about it this way, is it's almost like empathy kind of sounds like the right thing to do, in this day and age. It's empathetic to other people, empathetic to the people that, work on your team, empathetic to those that, you report to, to be successful. But it's not really a soft skill. I think I took
Mm,
away from it. It's not a soft skill. It's actually a strategic advantage to
mm,
have a culture. And it's not just like the right culture. There's no right culture, right? Or cultural fit. What does that really mean?
mm.
Some of these words are really important. Empathy is a really critical word that he drew out, and I think it's one that you and I have talked about in the past, Tony. I think gone are the days where the next generation workforce wants to be just command and control. They don't want
Yep,
that. They want
yep.
to feel valued, and they want the respect from their managers. They want to respect also back to their managers. They want to respect their colleagues, and a lot of it's around just putting yourself in other people's shoes and thinking twice about, of course I have an opinion, but those people also have an opinion and they have a
Mm.
very different background than I do. So why don't we, the empathy piece where we can sit back, listen, understand each other and try to focus on that one common direction that we all want to go, that we all want to commit to, especially in a company, in a business is super important. So I
Yeah.
love that that was within the first couple minutes that we
Yeah,
talked to him,
yeah,
like, that
yeah,
was the word,
yeah.
right?
And I think one of the unique things about the space industry compared to others, being a truly global industry, um, is that additional level of, uh, I guess, your own sort of emotional maturity and understanding of the cultural elements, like cross cultural. So not just sort of cultural in the
Mm,
business sense, but also working with different cultures, because we all work in a highly globalized environment, with companies from different parts of the world. People think very differently, and particularly when you look at acquisitions. And I just noted down a few of the big ones from the last couple of years, and it presents real challenges. Like, so you
mm,
think of, so Kevin talked about when iDirect, an American company, um, owned under sort of Singaporean ownership, or at least a big interest, acquired Newtek, which was a Belgian company. So, I mean, talk about the clash of three vastly different cultures, and the impact that has on
mm,
people. But also, you think about Viasat, big American satcom giant, acquiring Inmarsat, like one of the oldest British satcom, or one of the oldest satcom companies in the world, but very, very British in its culture. And the other one was OneWeb, which started as an American company, ultimately was domiciled in the UK, and then was bought by Eutelsat, like the the original French satcom company. So it presents real challenges, and managers at all levels have to be very deliberate and mature in their approach, because, like, just taking, I guess, a sort of um, a hard a hard and sort of hard charging American attitude to a particular topic won't
mm.
go over well. Won't go over well with, I don't know, a team in Belgium or the UK or Australia or whatever. And you can look at that from a whole range of different directions as well.
Yeah, and I love that you bring that up because I remember he was talking about how he was trying to maintain some element of empathy um, through Zoom, through video
Yeah,
meetings in the early days of these integration, these M&A activities. And I remember he mentioned something around um, how important that was for him to start to realize that, look, I'm talking to someone over a video screen. I know I want to be empathetic, but I need to come up with ways of being better at that because I'm not in front. It's different when you're with somebody, right? When
yeah,
you're in a room and you're kind of you're trying to listen to them. You don't see everything through video. And I remember he said that was one of the moments where I started to realize that empathy has to stop. It's not it needs to go from being an abstract thing and just a word to actually becoming something that really will help me succeed,
yeah,
or the integration succeed. And I remember he said a couple things that I was going through my some of the videos and I just pulled away a couple of these things that I loved, that we talked about with him. One was that he said that even small statements that if you're especially in a leadership position, let's talk about it as like a leadership. You have to be CEO, but you're in a leadership position. Small statements that you make can really change culture overnight unintentionally. So
yeah,
you have to be you don't have to script what you say, but I think it's part of being empathetic. You got to be you got to listen to what you're going to say. You got to listen to
yeah.
what the impact is. And so that kind of led to the second thing that I think you and I talked about with him was it was this kind of self awareness, about how your words might land with other people. Like just
Mm,
being constantly aware of the things that you're going to try to communicate, even if they're off the cuff, could have these unintentional consequences, or both positive and negative. Um, but they also land differently depending on the role you're in. They also people you're talking to, right? And I think the last thing too is, and I think this might have been his words actually. He said you can't afford to be just cavalier, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard, right? When you're, especially I think when you're a leader and you have so many things going on, you're focused on you. I don't know, if you're a startup, you have a board that's on you all the time, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's asking you for the vision. I don't understand the vision, right? You have a budget. You have to make decisions around investments and who your target customers are and all these kinds of things. But the core of it, just you're trying to surmount that mountain, which you probably never can do. You're always trying to catch up. You have to be mindful that people are always watching you, especially those that you're leading, and this kind of awareness of just don't be cavalier in how you interact. Be mindful of how the statements you make, the decisions you make, they're all in it together type of approach, and being a strong listener, being empathetic is something that carries a lot of weight. I love that part that we talked to him
Yeah.
about how you carry yourself and how you lead by example. I thought it
Yeah.
was really good.
Yeah. And actually, there'll be another clip later on where Kevin sort of reflecting on the loneliness of leadership, or the perceived loneliness of leadership, and decision making. I won't preempt that discussion, but I think it'll be a good segue for that. All right. So let's go to the next one. From another great CEO discussion with Carsten Drachman from GomSpace. Let's go to that clip.
First of all, when I go into this, I go in with the assumption everybody's fine. Everybody knows what they need to do. They have the knowledge and skills. The issue has been not setting those skills free and enabling people to be successful. That's the starting point. So typically it will be a leadership team, and there's usually a leadership group when you come in. So you sit down and you get to know those people quickly. And then you start talking and listening, trying to understand what's on their mind. And you will very often find out there's a lot of things that they never said in the past because it wasn't considered, okay to say it, or people didn't want to point out the flaws. So basically going in very quickly and opening up the floor for, hey, let's talk. Where do you want to do? Do you want to sit here and just watch the whole ship sink, or are we going to try and figure out where to go? And do you want to be on the journey or not on the journey? So it's going to be quite direct and confrontational in the beginning.
Mm.
My experience, 9 out of 10 people, they jump right on it because they all want to be successful. Many of them have been part of the companies I've turned around, have been there for a long time, and they're actually sad about that it's not really succeeding.
Carsten's the way that Carsten approaches it is really interesting, but again, like he's approaching this as a people problem, not like he's assuming. He talked about like it's not technology, yep, but like that's a given. The people have the skills to do the job. That's a given. It's about sort of focusing activities around like helping them be better at their jobs and helping them be motivated and understand the vision, and making sure everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction. And I guess I was thinking about the way that he framed it, and it's true. I mean, like most people are not most people, particularly I think in this industry. I don't think it's unique to this industry, but most people are not there just to draw a paycheck. Like people are there because they're excited about the opportunity. There's so many great people in the industry to work with. Like we all want to be valued. It's not just about making the dollars. It's about like being part of something bigger and being part of a mission and being excited and being fulfilled by it. And I think that's how he approaches that as a start point, with some tough discussions early on. But ultimately, like, so what are the things that you can do to help unlock I guess that talent and the opportunity that's there with the people that are there, and not trying to make a whole bunch of changes off the bat.
I was surprised by his comment when we asked him those questions, like, how do you even do a turnaround? How do you, and his answer was the people. And like you just mentioned, this, it's really, And I think he even said something like, well, the issue isn't even the people. It's just that their skills haven't been set free, like you just
Yeah.
mentioned, which to me is he's saying very similar things that Kevin did, which is like, you could tell he's an empathetic leader because he's just by that answer, right?
Yeah.
It's, so what's going on here is I think most of the time, if you're, when you go through business school and, I remember, it's a lot of it is like, well, you got to have the right organizational strategy, or you got to have the right strategy and the vision, and you have to
And the mission
have
statement and
mission statement, all this BS. I mean, that's not BS. It's like those are important things. Don't get me
yeah.
wrong,
Yeah.
but most of the time the answer is not. Well, people just it's like the behavior of the organization
Yeah.
that's really the important part, right? So I kind of took it as he was basically saying that. Uh, Empathy is actually an operational strategy, very similar to
Yeah.
what Kevin was saying, right? He was saying like, it is the strategy. It's not just a soft skill. And I think Karsten, when we talked to him, reinforced that, you know, no one wants to be on a ship that's sinking.
No.
I mean, no
No.
one
Well, and
does, right?
I think the other thing
Yeah.
that kind of demonstrates Carsten's understanding of that very specific situation of a turnaround, which is different to Kevin's experience,
Mhm.
is like it's a very precarious time for a business. And like in Carsten's example, he was faced with a choice which he'd been communicated, which was potentially acceptable at that time, was to wind the business down. And
Yeah.
he didn't take that route. But I mean, in that situation, you do have to quickly assess assess like, all right, so what do you have? If you got the right people? And because you don't have a lot of time to be making wholesale changes. So you
Yeah.
do need to like have that human element is amplified in that situation just because like you're on the clock and can you get you need time to get the business sort of stabilized before you start making decisions about whether you've got to reduce the headcount or you're looking and bringing in new talent. So
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting perspective as well.
Yeah, it's got to be like such a difficult situation because I mean I don't know. I think if you haven't gone through it before, I mean, what do you think the natural answer is to try to fix
Yeah.
a company or turn around a company? What is it, or country actually?
Yeah.
What do you do? Do you like listen to the people and figure out if they're in the right roles, or
Yeah.
is your gut reaction to say, oh, it mustn't have the right strategy or the right product or the right approach or enough financing, right? I feel like that to me is kind of the most common thing you jump to. And it's not, well, we have a lot like the assets at the end of the day in any business are the people, so how do you
Yeah.
learn from them, especially when you're new, like when his example, right? And figure out like what are all the tools in the toolbox and are they in the right place? Are they sharpened and are they pointed in the right direction? Right. And
Yeah.
it almost seems sometimes, I think, to some people is like, well, that's kind of an obvious thing. Like, obviously, we're going to talk about that stuff, but we don't have the right vision.
Yeah.
And I think what he was saying is actually, no, that's the most important part, right?
Yeah. And
Um,
zooming out just a little bit, like as we kind of close out this discussion on empathy, and I guess one of the most important messages for leaders, young and old, is ultimately it's because we've had some experiences of non-empathetic leaders
yep.
who ultimately that behavior fostered a really poor culture. But it's not about you. Like this is the message. Like it's not about you. You might have a fancy title. And I was thinking about like I've had moments of great success in my career, which has led to development. But part of it was obviously the effort that I put in, but the majority of it because I had a really great team around me, whether it was
Yeah.
coworkers or people working in my team directly. And it's a team sport. Like this, if you're a manager or an executive, this is not an individual activity. Like if you want to if you want to do that, I don't know, go and start your own consulting business or something.
That's right.
Like you can't. Otherwise, it just creates a miserable environment for people if you're just thinking about like, oh, how's this help me get to the next step?
Yeah, which is a very common
It's common
thing still. right?
Yep. And that might
Um,
get you. That might get you a couple of years down the road. Like it might last for 2 or 3 years. You might sort of like white knuckle your way through it,
Yep.
and squeeze the life out of it and the people that are working for you. But like it's not going to last. It's not going to last very long.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about this in other contexts too. There's generational characteristics of running businesses and operating teams, right? And I think what I'm finding now, as I mature in my professional life,
Like a fine wine.
is that you end up with people that, you can end up managing people that are older than you. You end up managing people that are the same age.
Yep.
You end up managing people that are almost maybe 20 years younger than you. And there are, I mean, I don't know. I've had that experience. Tony, you've
Yeah.
had that experience. And the question I have in my mind is, what is the common denominator that will make that team operate? It's not, oh, how can everyone make me look better and make me succeed? Doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. It's empathy is a really good word for that, right? Because it's about there's that concept of a servant leader, and how you make your team more operationally successful, which means sometimes you have to not be the only person that's getting all the credit, right?
Yep.
Like you have to have others get the credit too. And by the way, it motivates them to want to work harder and succeed. So I think this generational piece too, though, is really important because it's I see it in my own children. I see it in that are older, and I see it in people that I've managed that are in their 20s. They operate very differently than you and I did growing up in our 20s. In the first years working.
Yeah.
So,
all right, we are almost 30 minutes in, and we've only done 2 clips, so we better move
I
things
might have to
along
have
a little
multiple
bit.
sessions on this
We
one.
might have to. It's such a great topic.
It is. I love it.
Okay, so we're going to change gears now and talk about something that Janice Spruce really kind of emphasized, with culture being a competitive advantage. Unfortunately, there's no video on this. There's just going to be the audio.
There's a method that I've used for evaluating culture, and it's really helpful both when you're coming into a new culture. It's also very helpful if you're doing like an M&A type activity where you want to merge 2 groups together and trying to figure out where are the gaps, where are the big differences between those 2 groups. And it's so important too. Culture really is the only competitive advantage that a company has, I think, because you can't copy it. You can't, look up a patent and figure out how they did it, right? It's so internal and hard to copy. But there's 6 different elements that I look at and evaluate for culture. And they're really around, first of all, what's the employee orientation? How's the company treat its employees? What things are said about employees? What types of, you can look at what types of benefits or rewards or those kinds of things are there. The next thing is the customer orientation. I mean, we've probably all been places where people complain about the customers a lot. Is it that type of a culture?
So much easier if we didn't have customers to deal with.
How do we help the customer? So, just looking and listening at, what's their orientation towards our customer. And the next one is process, which I think, is a little bit obvious. How rigorous are the processes? How detailed are the processes? How deep are the processes? Are they helpful? Are they not? So really understanding how does their process orientation affect the culture. The next one is standards and accountability. And that's really, how do you measure success? If you're in a startup, you might not have great data, right? Because you don't have the systems yet to collect good data, whether it's financial or process or otherwise. And so how do you do accountability then? What things are people accountable for? Looking at what kinds of activities or behaviors get people promoted and what kinds of things get people fired or pushed aside. Those are important things to look at. The next thing that I look at is innovation. How quickly can new ideas be implemented? Are they welcomed? Are they shunned? And then the last thing is vision. Is there a clear vision for the company? I believe it's there's one of the fast food places that they say like, oh, people here bleed ketchup, right? Like that's, if there's things like that in your culture that really say, how well does it stick? How important is that culture? Is it positive? Is it negative in each of those areas?
Love a good framework, Rob.
Yeah, it was incredible. There's a lot there.
There's a lot there. It's a little bit longer clip, but
which fast food restaurant do you think she was talking to? I don't think we asked her.
Ketchup. I don't know, maybe Five Guys or something. I don't know.
Oh man, I don't know. Maybe McDonald's. Definitely wasn't Vegemite she was talking about. I'll tell you that much.
No. Funnily enough, we did a Costco, our first Australian Costco run a week ago. I was interested to see how different it was, and you could actually buy like a bucket of Vegemite.
Oh man, that sounds amazing. Will you send me one of those?
I'll bring one back for you.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait. I love Jana. I actually saw her for breakfast a couple weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
She was in town. Yeah. She is a great mentor. I look up to her very much in a lot of ways. I mean, what she did at Firefly and all these other, I mean, it's just incredible.
It's a really smart and intelligent breakdown too. And
you can tell she's an engineer, right?
Yeah. But, I mean, there's a book in that framework.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't know if the clip had it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the one thing she said in our interview was that culture is like the only true competitive advantage that a company that no one else can take away from a company.
Yeah, she said that at the start of the clip.
Yep. Yeah, it's uncopyable.
Yeah.
Which was, I was like, what? I've never heard anyone say that before. It makes a lot of sense, right?
It makes a lot of sense.
It makes a ton of sense. Like, someone could take your intellectual property, someone could steal your people, someone could, take your marketing, someone could recreate your product, but they can't really take your culture. And I think that's pretty true. I mean, I think having worked at so many different companies myself, there's some similarities, but it's definitely very different across all the different.
It's not something you can just
work.
lift and shift to another business.
No.
Either. So like what we see at Amazon wouldn't necessarily work at, I don't know, Microsoft or SpaceX
probably.
or whatever.
Yeah. But I love that about this kind of concept of, the culture is so critical and it's so unique and nuanced to the company and the people that have built that, company and that culture that it really cannot be replicated. It's hard to replicate it. And again, it's a strategic asset in a company, and it's really important. And I think for those that are starting even their own teams in large companies, or if they're starting their own company, I feel like it's so easy to just go, and then let the culture and let some of this stuff just kind of serendipitously happen. But there is something about being purposeful and thinking about, like what in her framework, she talks about how are people promoted?
All the different dimensions.
How are people held accountable? What happens when someone gets let go? What happens? How do you get promoted? What does a career progression really look like? Right. That all goes back to being a leader who's focused on the people. And if the people are happy and they're operating at a high level and they enjoy what they do, they're not gonna want to see the ship sink. And there's times when, especially when you're a young company, that I think a lot of people hit that point where like all hands on deck. How do we bind together and figure this out? So
I really like how she a lot of the stuff. I mean, they seem obvious points like people, customers, process. Like they seem obvious, but I mean, not necessarily in practice with a lot of places. But I did really like that she called out standards and accountability because I think that's something that's often not necessarily well thought out. Like in a sales environment, it's very. I think that's pretty translatable across most companies. You have a specific target, and if you achieve that. But for different types of functions and roles, and she comes from an engineering background or context, how people are measuring success and using that, whether it's for remuneration or whether it's for progression or just sort of understand, like helping to make sure the team recognizes that they're hitting their goals and they're making progress. Being very sort of deliberate and articulate in defining those accountabilities is really, really important. So I thought that was a really good call out.
I liked it too.
Yeah.
And it actually makes me think of, again, back to the empathy and culture part of it. Like recognition, I think is very personable.
Yep.
Or sorry, personal. It's
Hmm.
very personal. Some people do not want to be called up in front of a group of 150 people or maybe even 5 people and be called out about how the great work they did, right? They might want to get recognition. A silent recognition might be what they want because this is who they are and it's their personality, right? And I think trying to figure out, how do you motivate an organization, and recognition being one of those key pieces of it, which I think it is. That also is unique to people. It's the individuals, right? So
Yeah.
having these tools where you send these digital emails that say, "Oh, you did a great job." For a lot of people, it might not mean anything. To me, it doesn't mean anything, but for other people, it might mean a lot, right,
Yeah.
to them.
Yeah.
So I think that's also
Or a
something.
personal note, or like just
A
a lot of the
personal
time,
handwritten note for some
the
people.
simple
Yeah,
stuff is super effective.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next clip on the same topic. One of our favorite people, Kristen Sargent. So let's have a listen to Kristen.
I think culture is actually one of it's once it's wrong, it's hard to right.
Mm.
No, for me, culturally, I go back, I always kind of distill everything down into very like the kernel of what I recall culture being. And so in the Army, for me, it was one saying: mission, men, me, right? Always in that order, with that being your priority. And to me, that's just so obvious, right? Take care of mission first, then you take care of your people, then you take care of yourself. That is so obvious to me. And what was great is when it's that pervasive and obvious to an organization like the Army, right? Customer obsession is pretty much the same thing in Amazon. And so I've watched sort of the kernels of culture that I gravitate towards really be a part of every single organization I've had the privilege of being a part of. And in my company, right, I wanted the kernel to be really simple and kind of authentic to what I think matters in the sector. And because execution matters, to me, it's again probably just another take on mission, men, me, and customer obsession, but execution and the ability to over deliver for customers is something that I aim to do with my company, is something I want my clients to do when they sell to the government. And so just having that be the kernel of the culture that we build at Sargent Initiatives is really, really important to me.
Chris,
I just wanted to I love the how you've sort of drawn that line between mission, like your military experience, because I'm a veteran as well, and but that mission men me sort of connection to customer obsession. I'd never thought of it like that, because it's not always obvious to. I mean, not all people act that way, putting themselves last, and so it's a fascinating comparison. I never thought of it that way before.
Yeah, I mean,
I like those principles that kind of kind of exert humility. I think that one is one of them. The other one I like, Kristen, was when you and I were at Booz Allen. I don't know if you remember, there was one years ago that was called the essential partner, which I liked too. Which was, we can call you a client, call you a customer, which means, you're probably buying something from us, right? To more like, we want to sit next to you at the table and we want to be so valuable that we can't live without each other, which I always actually really was attracted to as well. There's kind of that humility within some of these principles. I think are really important, especially probably when selling to government.
Yeah, it was a really great reminder, how she that comparison to, I guess, those core skills that get inculcated to you as doing officer training in the Army, and obviously she had the US Army experience. I had the Australian Army experience, but that it's such a fundamental, foundational piece of how leadership is taught in the military, and like what. And like one of the most like simple sort of things that it's boiled down to is like the officers always eat last. Like if you're in a you always hang back, and whatever's left at the end, that's what the officers have to eat. And it's a simple example, but I like it boils down to that what we sort of talked about earlier about like it's not about you, it's about the team and how you're enabling the team to be successful. So in the military example, you want to make sure everyone's well fed and it's about morale and motivation. But it applies immediately. And even to this day, like I've been out of the army 15 years now. But whenever I'm in a situation where at an offsite or whatever and the food's being served, I always notice if there are like senior people that are first up at the line, and I just think, oh, okay.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. What and I mean, it's not necessarily. I don't judge people too harshly for this, but I don't know. You can sometimes correlate, like when you start seeing some of those, you can start sort of correlating the way how effective they are as leaders by some of that really basic stuff.
Especially people in leadership positions that decide that they're going to be the only one that talks, and they'll talk the entire time during a meeting.
100%.
That's a big red flag.
Yep.
Huge red flag. And I agree with you. What I like about all of this is her answer in her head. Like you could tell when she was trying to create her company, she was yearning for some framework that she calls it the kernel, right? Like that she could pivot off of, right? And clearly part of it was her own military background, one that you share with her, in commonality, which was this kind of humility of, at the end of the day, it's the customer or the mission first, you know?
Yep.
And it's my colleagues second, or not second, but I don't want to say second, but it's including my colleagues and the people I work with that I depend on, those that depend on me. And then it's me, right?
Yep.
But what I like about it too is that it doesn't leave me out of it. It's not like it's mission and then the men. She calls it out. It's mission, men, and also me, because that's true, right? Because there is an element of, I got to do what also, I got to take care of myself in order also to take care of my colleagues and lead them and try to focus and support the customer. The other thing I like about this that you and I have experienced it now is when you have a culture like this or a mission statement like that, when you have the healthy dialogue or maybe sometimes unhealthy confrontation within an organization, you know what the priority is, right? You can always go back and say, well, Tony, that was a great idea, but what the heck is the mission? Does it really help the mission? Right? Does it really help the rest of the organization? Or is it really just an idea, right?
Yeah.
And having that framework, I think sometimes also frees the culture, the organization from just having to confront the other person or the other people. It's really like you can center back on what's important, which is, in this case, the mission, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised to hear this from Kristen.
Yeah,
She's such a people person, and she's so high EQ.
Yeah.
But I love that too.
And I think, and we're going to talk, the next clip's going to be with Brett Alexander, reflecting on his experience at Blue Origin, company started by Jeff Bezos. But what we were just sort of talking about, like you think about a few of the little, like Amazon's not a perfect company, but I like the culture. It has changed a lot, but I think leadership principles are really good. But I think about some of those little principles are applied. They don't necessarily, not every team follows them, which can be a mistake. But I think like the idea of a set of tenets. So like when you're sort of faced with a decision about which direction you are going to go, right? So that we have these tenets, and this is we'll reflect on these when we get to a tiebreaker situation, or if we think it's a good idea. But also like that simple thing about, and again, I don't think enough teams are doing this. I'm seeing it sort of disappear a little bit from Amazon, and I want to commit to doing more of it. But in a doc read situation or a meeting situation, the leader is the last person to talk. And I think that's it's a simple idea, but I think it's a really it was a really smart decision that that Jeff made as he was building sort of the foundations of the culture at Amazon. I think it's a really good. It's something that everyone, I think, could apply regardless of where they work.
Yep, I agree. It
Yep.
makes it less of just a maybe a strong personal trait of an individual, a group of individuals. It kind of is it's leading by example again. It's it's this humility which I liked around the conversation with Kristen. That sense of humility, I think, it draws people together more
Yeah.
than it doesn't.
Because if
So
if the leader or the manager is talking first all the time, people people will speak up because they think they have to agree or they have to support it.
or they just have to
So
say something,
yeah,
which always is not always good, right?
right. All right.
So
So with that, let's go
I've
to
been
the
a victim of that. I've definitely
yeah,
done
yeah,
that myself.
yeah,
So
yeah. All right, let's go to the clip with Brett Alexander.
and how would you describe the culture over there, Brett? And did you take anything away from Blue Origin as a commercial space company to your next endeavor, your next role?
I certainly took a lot away personally. In terms of culture, the culture was of engineering excellence, and it was, I would say that could be painstakingly slow. And I think a lot of the criticism that people have said about Blue Origin, and I think that I would agree with, is that it has been very slow. And I think Jeff would agree with that too. It's been very slow to develop the capabilities that it has. But the engineering excellence part of it is that the people really understand what they're doing and the design of it and all of the nuances. And so that culture of caring about the end product, caring about space, being passionate about it, being willing to argue technically back and forth about decision making and then disagree, but commit to the path that's chosen, right? That was one of the leadership principles called disagree and commit. I think very much taken to heart there.
I love Brett also. Like a lot of these folks. I mean, having him on, to talk with us, Tony, was really special. I mean, he's really unique in the industry, such a leader. And, that conversation about, having disagreements within an organization and figuring out how to move forward, there's a beauty in that statement, in my opinion,
Mm.
that um, to me, I think what it says is that, let's embrace all the different backgrounds, that people have, the experiences they have, how they were raised, where they came from, the domain knowledge that they've acquired over the years. For whatever reason, the schools that they went to and how they helped them, they got learn different ways of looking at different problems, right? And the beauty in what he was saying is like, I think the best, most successful companies are embrace all that difference, but at the same and have the conversation, right? It's not like everyone needs to be an engineer, right? And sometimes it's actually a detriment in solving problems to have someone with all that background, right?
Yep.
Having all those differences, bringing the people together, but at the same time, instilling in the culture that we could talk about this for 9 months, or we can embrace all those differences and backgrounds, and then but we all agree and understand that we have to say that we agree to the next step, some next step, even if it's a baby step.
Mm.
Um, and I've never worked at Blue Origin, but I would just kind of assume that that's got to be one of the biggest strengths, like he mentioned, because you're working on these hard problems, things that people have never done before, or maybe they did it 50 years ago,
Yeah.
and really haven't done it since. And so, how do you embrace all the different ways that people want to maybe look at and solve a problem, but making those small incremental steps to have some progression. So I
Yeah.
love what he was saying there.
Yeah, and it made me sort of have a think about like how the culture kind of manifests in how you perceive a company as well. So, and look, everything I'm going to say in the next minute or so is just based on a very sort of shallow view, but perception is reality. And he talked about engineering excellence, and I can see and how that has slowed them down. And I think if you look in the launch market today, I mean, I think a lot of I think a lot of people would have expected, would have liked Blue Origin to be further along than where they are. But I can also sort of see the Amazon approach in what they're doing as well, where like it's the Amazon and obviously and Blue Origin, like they're not going to bring a product forward that is not like 100% ready for the customer. Like it, and you can contrast that to the way that SpaceX operates, and like SpaceX has been like enormously successful, and there's no argument that they've changed the industry. But there is a perception that they are moving fast. They're willing to break things. They're potentially less concerned about other, I guess, downstream impacts, whether it's like environmental impacts, or we'll address those later. So you saw that with like the reflection off the satellites that was causing problems in the night sky, or components that are falling on islands in the Caribbean. So I mean, only time will tell. I guess if one or, but I think both those companies will be able to operate in the market, and we'll see how successful Blue Origin will be. And I think they'll be enormously successful. I hope they will be. But you can see how that culture sort of manifests differently with different companies like that.
Yeah. And, I think it also supports the argument that there is no one particular
one size fits all
culture, right? I mean, like when we're talking about with Jana,
Yeah.
right? I mean, is the culture, I don't really know, at SpaceX, can you replicate that elsewhere? I mean, could they have just replicated that culture at Blue Origin and gotten there faster? I mean, no, right? No. So I think it also supports the argument that, there's different approaches to implementing different cultures, defining those cultures, making decisions, working together, leading in different ways. And I think that's a nice thing, because also, like we actually haven't talked about this. When you're looking to go to a different company, that actually should be the most important thing, that you interview the interviewer around.
Yep.
Is how, and not just, what's the culture like? Which, by the way, I've asked those questions in the past. I think there's more specific questions you can ask. How are decisions made, right? How are new ideas authored and communicated? How are people promoted? How are people held accountable? All the things we're talking about. Like, these are great things to actually ask your next potential employer, because, someone that is an engineer that wants to, build the next rocket or whatever, they may be very attracted to I'm going to break everything as much as possible, and I'm going to work 50,000 hours and all this stuff. Whereas, I might be someone who's more comfortable in a slower approach, because we were talking about it. Everyone's different, right?
Yep.
So, but it is interesting to compare those two companies, because they are very different culturally.
But your point is really good too, and as a matter of advice, I think for people to think about asking those culture questions, because when you change jobs, it's a massive investment that you're making. It might seem like you're trying to escape something, or maybe you just want to do something new, but I mean, you're making a commitment for probably at least 12 or 24 months. And it might take a little bit of time before you realize that actually I really hate working for this place, or I really love working for this place, but it would be nice to improve the odds so you're not having to do it again.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to our final topic. So this is really where we're talking about, I guess, how to the courage in decision making in uncertain situations. And we're going back to another clip from Kevin Steen.
And I got over it, but it took me probably a year to get through that, or 9 months to get through that phase where I was a little more comfortable in the role. One of my mentors said the CEO job is the loneliest job in the world. Right. You have no peers. So you're alone. You have to go find other CEOs to talk to. And if you don't do that, you're going to bottle it up. And so she remains to this day one of my mentors.
Wow.
So who are those? What are those key relationships and support mechanisms for you in that
in those roles. Like,
You can't say your mom and you
No.
can't say your wife.
no. Actually,
That's a given.
my wife is one of them.
It's a given.
But it's those people that you built relationships with that you trust, and you have a challenging problem. You want to run by them, and you know they're going to be brutally honest, not just make you feel better.
Yeah.
Some of them have been CEOs, but some of them have just been COOs, or there's someone who, not just, I didn't mean to come off as condescending. But it's those people who know you, know your strengths, know your, all those things, and will be honest with you. And ideally have had that kind of experience that they can help. Well, think about this, think about this, think about this. And you know, sometimes they just say think about versus give you the answer, right? Because that's the answer. Getting the answers to someone else is kind of a shortcut that I don't subscribe to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like the easy way out.
I think there's a really great reminder that you don't, if you're whether you're the CEO of the company or a leader of a small engineering team, like, you don't have to be bulletproof. You don't have to have all the answers. And it comes back to the humility piece. Like, no one expects you to be perfect. And I think having the humility to seek advice, and I think there's a good message in there about having relationships with people outside of your individual organization or team or broader, like people that you can go to that are going to give you some non-partisan feedback and maybe challenge you. Again, I really like how he said, like, don't go looking for someone to solve your problem for you. But I look back on some of the people that have been influential in my decisions I've made through my career, and Rob, you're one of them. I mean, it's someone that you can that will ask you more questions to have you sort of consider it, and so that you'll perhaps consider a new perspective and come back to that situation, and hopefully be more effective.
I agree. I mean, it's I think anyone that tells you they're not scared when they first take over even a middle manager job at a big company, right, is lying to you if they're not scared. If they're saying they're not scared, right? Or if they're really not scared, you kind of got to wonder if they're actually a good leader, because they're just kind of cocky,
Totally. Yeah,
cocky,
absolutely.
arrogant, and they're covering up, most of the time, probably their own insecurities, right? And then that's going to be his or her focus, and not the team, right?
Well, that's the sort of person you don't want, because they're not going to learn
Right.
anything new. They're just going to bring their old ideas.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think, one of the things that Kevin, I think, reiterated was that, you're going to be nervous. You're going to be in positions where you might stay up all night because you're like concerned, a decision I make might not be the right one. Is there a right one? I don't know. So how do you use that apprehension as a strength and not a weakness is the key. And it's hard, right? Because, in those moments, you got to somehow figure out, do the 4-box breathing, go for a walk, and then figure out, like, all right.
Don't send a response to that Slack message that got you
by the
fired
way,
up.
never do that. I mean, yeah. Write that email. You can write that email, but just delete it. Do not send it. Right.
Yeah.
But that helps, actually, by the way. But yeah, you use that apprehension, use that, the stress of the situation as a strength. And I think a lot of times that is a strong quality in a leader, because it's like this healthy paranoia in some ways, right? It's good because I think a lot of that means that you're self-aware, right? I'm self-aware because I don't know if I know the answer. I'm not sure if I know the answer. And to your point, Tony, it's okay to be able to say that. And frankly, most people should be saying that, because most of these problems are much bigger than one single person, and their own experience they've had in their own life, right? So,
And I think that will
yeah.
help you earn trust with your team. They
100%.
recognize that you are
Vulnerable.
that you are vulnerable,
Being
and you have
vulnerable.
humility, and that you recognize you don't have all the answers. Because I think if people think you have all the answers, I don't know, it doesn't necessarily create a very productive work environment, and then you're not going to get you're missing opportunities from your team, like what you're there for as well.
And there's a non-obvious sense of recognition when you have someone that you really respect and a leader that calls you and says, you know what, Tony, I'm not really sure what to do next. What would you do?
Yeah.
And you get that from your manager, another leader, or someone you admire. Like there's like this indirect sense of recognition that you can feel from that, which I think
Yeah.
some people actually really like. I actually like that, you know,
Mm.
just being included and being a part of a problem solving exercise with someone that may be a very deep domain expert or maybe in a very senior leadership position. It's exciting. And if that person's reaching out to you to get help, I mean, they're recognizing you, right?
Mm.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Good. All right. We've come in on time a little bit, not going too bad. All right, we've got one more clip just to round out the discussion. Some last thoughts from Janice Bruce.
There's a couple things that I've found is, engineers, especially maybe your earlier engineers, are a little bit nervous, and they'll want to go do the easy things first. And that's really the wrong approach. The important thing is to really push your team to tackle the hardest things first. Go prototype it, because you'll learn more from the hardware or the software itself, right? Like, go run it a few times, because that's where you'll fail a couple times, which is good to fail early and learn from it. Whereas I think what we've seen in some of the larger companies is they lay out this giant schedule and they have their milestones, and then they break everything down into these 2-week chunks. And lo and behold, it takes all of 2 weeks to get each of those things done. And everybody pushes off the hard part till the end. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, you're tackling the hard part, and, forget it. At that point, your schedule's just ruined. So, getting people to be a little more flexible about scheduling. You still have to hold those hard, review dates and those kinds of things, but give people a lot more flexibility in the beginning and push them to try those hard things first, and give them a little space to maybe screw it up a couple times, right? Because that's probably going to happen, and you don't want that to be happening at the end of your design cycle.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of hard things, Rob and I used to work with a gentleman, Daryl Shook, who worked extensively with astronauts, and you've been involved in advanced spacesuit technology. I think a lot of people probably don't have perspective on like how challenging that sort of project is. It's not the sort of spacesuits we saw from the Blue Origin activity that everyone's talking about this week. Different sort of spacesuit. That wasn't directly relevant to the clip, but I guess this
That was
one,
good revisiting that, though. That was funny.
That was right after the Katy Perry.
Yeah. No, trust me, I remember.
It was interesting kind of listening. So listening to that clip after we just had that discussion is different to what my notes, the notes I've taken. But I think there's a practical aspect to doing the hard stuff first, in terms of just managing your way through a project. But I think the other aspect is exactly what you said previously, and I think for me, sort of the takeaway, and actually I've been in this current role that I'm in for a couple of months now, moving to Australia. Like, I've felt this kind of stress in my chest the last week as I get ready to launch back into things. But I think what you sort of said previously, like, I think feeling uncomfortable is good. And I think there's a great message in that, for everyone, a practical message. Like, you should probably be worried if you do feel too comfortable.
Yep. I agree. Yes.
And don't avoid the hard stuff, because I think that's what ultimately.
And man, it's so easy to say that, though.
It
right?
is.
It's so freaking easy to say that. Like, okay, Rob, use your apprehension as strength. But I mean, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to do these things. I think when we talked to Jana with that clip, I think she was exhibiting, or she was trying to help us understand what it means to to have courage around the things you really are not so sure about, having that apprehension. And a way to turn it into a strength is by, like, what a lot of software development, and frankly, more and more, I think, space development is doing, which is saying, well, we're not going to really know. We're not going to really, we can't codify the success and then go do it. we have to learn and move forward. And there is some courage involved in that, and having a culture that supports people that have the courage to try and iterate and break things and move, because that's when you learn the most. And it goes back to what Brett was saying around this, and you too, around, there's this engineering excellence aspect of Blue Origin. Um, if you don't know anything more about that, if you don't dig underneath the surface of that, then you may say, oh, well, they're slow because all they wanted to do was build the perfect rocket. But maybe under the cover, it's really around these are really hard problems. But we have adopted kind of this mantra of, you know, maybe we're not in the iterative mode, but we sure as heck are going to share a lot of ideas, and we're going to decide on how we're going to actually move forward in the iterative mode, and make that first step. So I think all of this here is, I think, especially in this industry, I don't think we talked enough about the uniqueness of the space industry, but this is one uniqueness of the space industry. I think everyone would argue that, like, these problems are some of the hardest problems. They're some of the most ambitious missions that people are trying to fulfill.
Mhm.
And because of that, yeah, I mean, leaders are going to be they're going to be nervous and scared at times around making bad decisions. Um, the question is how do you turn that into a strength? And sometimes I think it's having the courage of not just, being nervous and scared, but it's the courage to take that and channel it into something that's positive.
Yeah.
And that could be, let's iterate and learn together, right? And I think that also ties back to the culture you want to build in your company around being empathetic. Because in those times when you're all in the room trying to figure things out, you better use you better use all the assets you have at hand, all the
Mhm.
strengths of the people that you have hired and you nurture at the same time. So, um, Tony, this has been so
Yeah.
fun. I mean,
This is- it was-
we could probably talk about this for another 2 hours, to
we
be
could.
honest with you. I mean,
Yep.
and these people, I think it's making me realize the more and more we do talk about these things, like how incredibly talented these people are that we've been interviewing. So thank you to everybody
Yeah,
that have actually done
absolutely.
this with us. It's been so fun and such a pleasure, and I can't wait to do the next 1920 with you,
That's
Tony.
right. Yep. Yep. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Rob. Great to talk to you. I know it's getting late there. So hope you enjoyed the episode. Make sure you follow. Well, you're probably already following. Write a review or send us a note if there's something you're interested in as well. We'd love to hear from
Yeah.
you as well. So with that, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Cheers.
See ya.